All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be with everyone on a glorious Wednesday. Wednesday brings some glorious stuff into the show regularly, and today is no exception. And by gloriousness, I'm talking about, of course, the professor. John Rothmann joins us a little bit later. Yeah, exciting. A lot of big recorded applause for John Rothmann. And Belinda Weymouth with It's the Planet Stupid. We talk about things involving the environment and the future of the planet. Belinda will be here. Yeah, some very... Albert is here, and he is a fan favorite.
Albert, thank you.
Speaking of fan favorites, I'm so sorry, Albert, about the Oakland A's. It is a sad, sad comment on a community and a sports franchise that could not reach any kind of resolution. And now the Bay Area loses. The Bay Area where Albert lives. He lives in the East Bay. He's a Giants fan, and they're a two baseball team community. But you still have to. It's still a huge bummer, isn't it, to lose the A's?
Yeah, just Oakland in general losing so many teams over the past what is it 40 years? They've in and out of teams. Nothing.
But also having such a rich history over that time, you know. They had such great franchises. The A's themselves, an incredible franchise through the 80s. I just feel bad. And I sent you, I doubt we're going to have time for it, but I sent you the Larry Beal thing.
It's been going around.
The sports guy on
all media outlets.
On Channel 7 up there going nuts about it and basically calling out ownership. But it's a little bit late.
They did have a walk-off victory last night, which was kind of bittersweet. It's
oh, is that right?
More of those. Yeah, they had a nice walk-off last night.
Did they play the Yankees, right? Who did they play?
Let me double check because I only saw the highlight prior to the show. But
I'm having my Coachella Valley coffee. It's terrific today. I mean, just must tell you. It's magnifico, super magnifico. Welcome, everyone. We have a special guest in the next minute or so I'm going to not delay too long. A weird thing happened in Los Angeles. It's maybe a sign of the times, but maybe maybe there's more at play. So we'll get to that in just a second, too. I wanted to quickly acknowledge Janet R. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
It is a super chat. And she says, I usually get interrupted by work during the Mark Thompson show, so I wanted to show my support early because today is my 20th anniversary. Come on. It can be done, everyone. All of you who are...
Woohoo!
Yeah, there's Kim.
Kim, how are you?
The clear air turbulence, which can oftentimes affect relationships after 10, 15 years. Janet just shakes it off. 20 years together. My God.
I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry.
It's cry-worthy, I have to say. Very impressive, Janet R. And best wishes to you and your husband. Very cool. Super sticker from Spencer Jaffe. Thank you,
Big
Spencer.
shout out.
First into the super chat and super sticker world. We are crowd-funded, so we do make a big deal out of people in the crowd who bother to fund us. It's a very special thing. And thank you for sharing the show in all the ways you do. All right, I don't want to delay any further. I want to get right into it. And so,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Something happened, I guess it was during the evening hours, the overnight hours. Is that the timing you can set me straight on? And maybe they'll set us straight on the specific timing in this news package. Essentially, an L.A. bus, a public bus, was hijacked. And what happened next was beyond scary. Albert has a little package, and then we have one of our regulars who is an expert in this area in ways in which you would never even imagine. And we'll get to him in a second. Go ahead, Albert, please.
Good morning. That terrifying standoff in the heart of downtown L.A. is now over. The LAPD saying one passenger was reportedly shot multiple times, died at an area hospital. The suspected hijacker has been arrested, and the driver and another passenger have been rescued. You can see them being pulled out of that bus here in the middle of the night. Now, police are still investigating why the suspect appears to have hijacked that Metro City bus and then started that slow speed chase through Los Angeles. The bus trailed by those LAPD cruisers. You can see lights and sirens. The driver of the bus at the wheel, easing the bus over city streets and over those spike strips that officers deployed to try to puncture the tires of the bus to try to slow it down. Now, you can see in this video, the marquee on the bus, instead of a bus route, says emergency, call 911. Finally, the bus stopped. SWAT was called out, and eventually it seems to have raided the bus to free the passengers and the driver. Now, at this point, it's unclear how that passenger died of those gunshot wounds or who shot him. Authorities say they are still investigating the incident, but it's the latest in a string of security incidents aboard mass transit here in Los Angeles.
Okay, so thank you for that, Albert. I want to bring on someone who's come and spoken to us before about logistics and also about technologies that essentially relate to connections and GPS technologies that relate to those connections worldwide, that they connect to any number of movements worldwide. And that is oddly something quite relevant to that story. Here's John Rosenthal, everybody. Hi, John. Thank you.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm well, and thank you for joining us on short notice. Tell us exactly what technology you've actually, it's a weird coincidence, you've had a series of high-level meetings about just this kind of situation and the way to, from a technological standpoint, perhaps prevent it or cut it off sooner.
Yeah, well, Mark, thanks for making time on short notice. Look, let me first say, this is a horrible tragedy, and my heart goes out to the people that were affected. And, the news is just coming in, so I don't want to comment about what happened or how it happened because, the fog of war, right? So let's let the police do their thing. Of course, the immediate tragedy is bad, but I think what it highlights is that, we have built here in Los Angeles one of the, a world-class metro system. We've spent billions and billions of dollars, and it's really a testament to the city's foresight. We need exactly that. Unfortunately, it hasn't been, all that safe. And I think the perception of the public is it hasn't been all that safe. The safety of the passengers and the employees can be significantly enhanced by the things you and I have talked about in the past, which is location intelligence technology, which is homegrown. You'll remember that that we here in Los Angeles have one of the largest companies in the world, company out in Redlands, which dominates that marketplace, about 45% market share in this notion of location intelligence. Now, what does that tell you? When you ask the question of where, like where are the people, or where are the buses, or where are the trains, and then you ask the further question of what is happening relative to that asset at the particular moment in real time. Now that's super important, right? Wouldn't you love to know every asset, where it is, and be able to predict with some degree of accuracy, where do we have hotspots? Where are things happening, crime happening more than other places? Now, this is particularly relevant today because for sure, this will be an international story. This is going to get international news. We have upcoming several major events, including the Olympics and the World Cup. The city is rightly concerned about the impact that has, safety has on the public and on people wanting to come to Los Angeles to visit the Olympics. And it's going to put a great deal of stress on public safety. I think the mayor is keenly aware of this. In fact, I met with her last week, and she could not have been more forthright and committed to making sure that people that come to Los Angeles, she just got back from the Paris Olympics, They saw what happened there in terms of the level of safety that went on at the Paris Olympics. I think she told me that, currently I think we have about 15,000 LAPD officers. They had 57,000 security people at the Olympics in Paris. Now that's a big stretch, and LA's going to call on lots of other resources. But the point here is, I think there was a bit of an awakening to the LA constituencies who went to Paris to look at this, including part of our LAPD, to see how they're deploying their assets. And so they're keenly aware of this for sure, and that's a good thing. And I applaud them for that. The point of my coming on today is to say, you just can't imagine how technology can lever the limited resources that any city has. We all have finite resources, whether you're in Paris or you're in LA, we have finite resources. Incidents like this that happened last night may well have been prevented through understanding of location intelligence. I mean, for example, did that person, criminal who got on there and killed somebody, did they have a cell phone? Does he have a history? Could you have understood that maybe you didn't want that person on the bus, right, at that time of night? So it's things like
wait, let me just stop you there. There are two things that kind of are confounding. But let me start with what you've just said, and then I'll go back to the other one. What you've just said, I wonder about what technologies you're employing to establish whether the person had a cell phone and who they are. I mean, that strikes me as another level of technology. I didn't know that we had that.
Well, we certainly have the technology. I think there's an ethical question of whether that's appropriate to be deployed, right? But again, I don't want to get into the sort of the
civil liberties issues that Carol mentions. What about civil liberties? Right. Yeah.
And I don't want to get into that issue because that's a very, relevant issue and a much, much longer philosophical discussion. All I'm saying is the technology is available today, can be deployed today, right now. It could be deployed very simply. That would give you a lot more information. And you can decide as a society what parts of that information are appropriate, what parts of that information invade your civil liberties. You can pick and choose, but the technology exists. And so it seems to me that we would be well served to at least understand the panoply of options that we have available to us. We're not even having that discussion, right? So again,
so you're saying that from a technological standpoint, we are still not, in your judgment, quite where we need to be, even sort of minimally, to meet the needs of the Olympics and a number of challenges that we'll have in Los Angeles and in major cities generally will have as we move into the future. You're saying there are technologies available now that don't necessarily even cross the threshold of civil liberties issues that could actually have helped out last night. Is that a fair summary?
That's an absolutely fair statement. And so, I hope that that we can participate in just sharing, what the options are. I mean, the technology is quite, now it's been deployed in other settings. As we've talked a lot about the port. We've talked a lot about, trucking and logistics. But the fact is that this technology is designed for any kind of an asset, and an asset could be a human being. Anything that moves within some sort of a network where you want to understand that movement and you want to understand how it moves and efficiencies in terms of where there's congestion and where there's crime, right? Wouldn't you like to know that certain places within your network are experiencing higher levels of disruption or crime?
Now, when you say that, and this is great because you're essentially, now we're moving beyond this one incident and we're sort of looking at the overall situation, and you're saying that what technologies then pertain to that you're talking about that will give you, is it 911 calls? What are you talking about? All of a sudden, wouldn't you like to know what crimes are going on in a certain area. Don't we know that already, Jonathan?
Well, we do to some extent, but these systems. Remember, we're Southern California. How many? In the county, I think we have 44 cities, something like that, right? So each city might have its own transit authority. Each city might have its own police department. Each city has its own. Those systems, each one of those enterprises has its own software. It's digitalized, and it has its own software operating system. Those systems are not interoperative. So they have a great deal of difficulty communicating across these networks.
I see. That's such a familiar problem in states and municipalities nationwide.
It's huge. Oh, look, I mean, this is in a microcosm. Isn't this precisely what happened with Donald Trump when the Secret Service couldn't talk to the local police department? On a much grander scale, much bigger scale. This is exactly what's happening. This science that you and I have talked about in the past, which is thought of as location intelligence, allows you to look across networks. So, for example, wouldn't you like to have somebody traveling on a Santa Monica bus hit a panic button if there's a problem, and it would go immediately to the closest security officer? It doesn't go to the LAPD 911, who then has to call the Santa Monica department. I mean, I'm making this up. I don't know how,
but you're saying
I'm not an operator, so I don't know how this works. But right. But you don't want delays, right? So one of the things we've been talking about is a panic button, a simple panic button. So you get on your phone, and it tells you where the bus is. It tells you what time it arrives. It tells you all the things that you would normally want to know, particularly if you're trying to go to an event. I want to go to the water polo event. How should I get there? Well, it turns out, you got to use the metro and then the bus. And okay, so now I've got my phone. I have a problem. I hit a panic button, and it says exactly where I am, and it says to the closest security officer that I have a problem. So it doesn't send it to some disparate operating system, which then needs to communicate back. So that's
if it's used responsibly, it works. But I could see, that panic button is going to be used by everybody all the time, and just to F with people. I mean, but I think there are fail safes that you can even build into that, which is, they're associated with, when you hit the panic button, you're IDing, your location, your number, your, whatever, maybe you're IDing yourself.
Right. So again, I don't want to get, sort of deep in that's a fair discussion, right? Like, how is this going to be deployed, and how's it going to be executed?
It's a nascent technology in this way. So I hear you.
It is. We're in the first inning of a 9-inning game in location intelligence, but it's incredibly powerful. My only point is, we ought to be having the conversation.
Sure.
And we ought to be thoughtful in to what extent this technology would be helpful. It'd be for sure would be very, very helpful. With security matters, for sure.
I love that you took a second to talk to us about this. I think it's so relevant, especially with the Olympics coming up as they are. And I'd love to get you back on and discuss this more, particularly if you're having these high-level discussions with city leaders. It feels as though when you look at potential danger spots or hot spots, Los Angeles and Southern California certainly falls into that category. So to the degree to which technology can anticipate and offer solutions, you're our guy. So I look forward to continuing this, Jonathan Rosenthal.
Well,
thank
Mark,
you, pal.
As you know, you always have my number. So if we
I sure appreciate you reaching out, because on this bus incident, I never would have put 2 and 2 together on this. So thank you.
Great.
All right, great. Jonathan Rosenthal, everybody. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, my friend. Talk soon.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Such a smart guy. Love having him on. Before the show, we had to scramble everybody. I like to kind of pull back the curtain, because I myself don't even know where the scramble ended up. Kim and I meet every night, pretty much, virtually. We discuss what the headline will be for the show and this sort of thing, because we have a lot in the show. We can't, in a headline, speak to everything we have in the show. So we have to decide, you see, what will essentially be the headline banner the way a newspaper or magazine does, right? And then, of course, all that stuff exists in the show that isn't reflected in the headline, but we hope that the headline brings people in. So there is it's not wrong that there, in this world of YouTube, is sort of a clickbaity aspect to some of the things you need to do. You need to get people interested, right? I mean, the old adage, you can't save souls in an empty church. It's true. Bring people into the church. Then you can start preaching the gospel. And so that's our conversation today was a little bit of a scramble. Albert did rise to the occasion and hooked up the one part of the scramble, which was the last-minute ad of the guest.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Yeah, thank you, Albert, if you could smash it with your iron rod also. But, Albert, I wanted to ask you, did you also tweet? Because that would be a tall order. Did you really do that?
I did. Yep, I did.
Wow.
Albert, thank you.
Very, very impressive. And then Kim, I asked her, and this is the thing I was getting to, because we meet and we sort of bake the cake the night before. But it's kind of a placeholder because stuff happens. And I just felt that the situation with the Haitian group that is calling for the arrest of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, I thought that should be on the front page. Again, it's not what the whole show's about, but I felt we should get it in there. And so I made this 11th hour plea to Kim to try to take care of it. And have we done it, Kim, or not? What's the status?
We've done it. I'm tweaking the picture a little bit because I don't
Kim,
necessarily like the way the words showed up. But yes, it's being taken care of.
I don't know that we can change it, sadly.
We did already.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
well, I love that. I mean, thank you. I think that's impressiff. Kim,
Kim, how are you?
You just have to change it within YouTube, so you can't change it within the other system.
I don't know what that means.
It means that we use a platform called StreamYard. You can't change it in there once the show begins. You have to go to YouTube and change it there.
But you did change it, which is cool.
I did indeed.
All right. Well, then that's Kim. I mean,
I blame you.
Yes, I think I am to blame, and you rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
It's never been anything like this.
I know. Very well done. Kim actually clears the first hurdle. Very, very impressive indeed. We love our Kim. We feel bad when we have to drop something on her last minute. She is a mother of two. And I'm always acutely aware of her responsibilities as a mother of two.
I can do news. I do have that capability as well, if you'd like it.
You're saying you would like to do news now before John Rothmann?
Well, or after, but I just want you to know that despite the other tasks laid before me, that is also on the table.
Ah, it's good. Well, a lot of love for Kim in the chat, and that's one of the reasons I mention Kim and discuss these things, because I'm trying to build her profile and get her love. Because if something were to happen to me, I'd like you to continue and to, carry the torch, Kim.
What?
I'm not saying it's going to. I'm just saying it's a...
There's no replacing you, Mark Thompson.
Well,
No.
of course, you're right about that.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
I'm just saying, though, if something were to happen.
So why don't you just keep being a vegetarian and make sure you stay alive? All
well,
right?
I'm not a vegetarian. I'm a vegan.
Vegan.
Okay,
Sorry,
so,
my bad.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And it's all the same to you, to you meat eaters, but it's not the same to us. Now, I've got a great Law and Disorder. I kind of really want to get to a great Law and Disorder before I get to Rothmann. I'm just looking at the time. I've got 6 minutes. I've got 6 minutes before Rothmann. Can't we do, Albert? I'm going to turn to you on this. What would you like to do? Albert, here's a choice. An audience, I ask you, these are the kinds of things that we face minute to minute. I can do Law and Disorder now and then Rothmann, or I can do Law and Disorder in the second hour and have Kim's news now instead. What would you, or I can, and obviously Kim's news would be top of the hour, and then I would do Law and Disorder second hour if you'd prefer.
Yes, let's get to John now, and we could get to Law and Disorder in the second hour.
Okay, I don't even know if that was one of the choices, but I was so confused myself that I...
Albert, thank you.
I'm glad. Okay, so Rothmann now or Kim's news now? Rothmann.
Oh, we
now.
could do
Rothmann
that
now.
too. So Kim's news, Rothmann, and then Law and Disorder.
Things are changing
supercharge
constantly. I
news.
love that.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Okay, so let's just review. There'll be a turbo news, a little chunk of news before Rothmann. Then Rothmann. We'll talk Trump. We'll talk the Middle East a little bit. And you'll get all of your Professor Rothmann. And then in the second hour, I have Law and Disorder, which features one of my favorite government officials right now. I mean, in a good way, it features one of my favorite government officials, who's now getting a little visibility as well. But also it features Alex Jones and Rudy Giuliani. All of that in the second hour when I do Law and Disorder. Smash the like button if you would. It helps us
iron rod.
in this world of YouTube. And Beth Farmer says something that I was feeling, and I'd like to post it now. Beth Farmer says, just get on with the news already. Okay. All right. Sorry, Beth. You're absolutely right. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The House is expected to vote on a 3-month funding extension today that would prevent the old government shutdown. The continuing resolution is expected to pass thanks to Democratic support, despite some Republicans being against any kind of stopgap. The bill would keep the government funded until December 20th, so just kicking the can down the road yet again. It will not include new voter registration requirements that former President Trump and other Republicans had called for any spending bill to include. Earlier this week, House Speaker Mike Johnson said forcing a government shutdown this close to an election would be an act of political malpractice. Speaking of the election, Vice President Harris and former President Trump are hitting battleground states today. The polls have them in a really tight race. Trump is in North Carolina today. That's a state he once may have had in his pocket that suddenly turned really competitive. Vice President Harris will be in Pittsburgh giving what aides say is a major address on the economy. Meanwhile, their vice presidential pick, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, are prepping for their debate next Tuesday. President Biden is insisting that he would have been reelected had he stayed in the race. He was on ABC's The View today. President Biden saying, "I was confident I would beat Trump. He's a loser." He also said he is at peace with his decision to end his bid for a second term. The president added that he never fully believed the assertions that there was an overwhelming reluctance to him running again.
Man, things have sure changed, haven't they? The dialogue and discourse in America has changed markedly when Biden, who is the most institutional mainstream Democrat, you can call him a commie, you can call him a socialist, whatever the right calls him. He's the most mainstream, middle-of-the-road guy, all about the institutions, my distinguished colleague kind of guy. When he starts saying Trump is a loser, when he starts smack-talking the opposing party on The View, I'd say we've crossed the Rubicon.
I am here to tell all of you, my wonderful co-hosts and the viewers at home, that this is going to be my last season here at The View.
Wow. That's Meghan McCain's farewell on The View. Maybe that was when we crossed the Rubicon. Go ahead.
An evacuation order is in place for residents in an Ohio township after a dangerous chemical leak yesterday. Some Whitewater Township residents were forced to evacuate after this order was put into place Tuesday when authorities learned of a train car leaking a dangerous and potentially explosive chemical called styrene. Fire officials say if the tanker car holding the chemical heats, it could blow, and crews have been working to keep that car cool. So, quite a catastrophe there. Several people connected to a suicide pod are under arrest in Switzerland. A 64-year-old American woman suffering from a severely compromised immune system was the first to use this portable chamber. Police arrested the co-president of the pod maker, Last Resort, and others for inducing and aiding and abetting suicide. Last Resort described the death as peaceful, fast, and dignified. The chamber is flooded with nitrogen gas, causing the user's oxygen levels to drop to deadly levels. But
sorry, what is who would endure this? What is this going to be?
Well, it would be a last resort type of situation, and it's a pod that apparently a controversial portable chamber that you go into if you're toward the end of your days. And
I see. So we would have an option. This is another kind of
right, but they're using this in Switzerland where it's against the law. So they can't do that there. Yeah.
Man.
Who knew? Suicide pod. Yikes. China has test fired an intercontinental...
Sometimes I feel this show is on a suicide pod. Am I right?
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it really does feel that way occasionally. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Maybe today. China has test fired an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean. This is the first known test into international waters in more than 40 years. According to the Chinese Ministry of National Defense, the missile fired Wednesday was carrying a dummy warhead. The statement says it fell into expected sea areas, so they meant to do it. As mentioned earlier on the show, one person has died after a Los Angeles city bus was hijacked overnight. Police say a suspect shot a passenger and forced the driver to lead the Los Angeles police on an hour-long pursuit in the city's downtown area. The bus was eventually stopped by spike strips. The suspect surrendered and was taken into custody. Police say 2 passengers and the driver were on the bus, with one of the passengers dying at a hospital before being found with multiple gunshot wounds. So, yikes. Investigators are searching for additional explosive devices in other areas near a courthouse in Central California. A person of interest is in custody after an explosion inside of a courtroom today. This happened at the Santa Maria Courthouse. That's about 65 miles north of Santa Barbara. Local media there reports a suspect threw a bag in an arraignment courtroom right before the explosion happened. The Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office said there are 2 reports of non-life-threatening injuries, but people are being urged to avoid this area as the search for additional explosives continues near the courthouse in Santa Maria. Meta is reportedly signing deals with Hollywood actors to voice its artificial intelligence chatbot. Oh, Mark, you need to get in on this. According to published reports, Dame Judi Dench, Kristen Bell, John Cena, Aquafina, Keegan-Michael Key, I don't know who that person is. They're among those who have signed on already.
Yeah, you do. Key and Peele. He's Keegan-Michael Key from Key and Peele. Anyway, go ahead.
I don't know who that is. CEO Mark Zuckerberg is expected to make an official announcement during his keynote speech today at the annual Meta Connect event.
Well, we'll follow up on this. I don't want to make Brother Rothmann wait too much longer, but I just, I will tell you, I have a lot of thoughts and personal experience with voices being used in artificial intelligence and being used essentially on loan to any number of commercial enterprises, including Meta. So we'll talk about it in the next hour.
They could make you say anything, right?
Yeah, well, they essentially license your voice, and by doing it, they can just take a sample of me talking right now, and they can have my voice say whatever they want. But of course, they're not going to use my voice. They're going to use the voice of a very famous celebrity like Dame Judi Dench or whomever.
Like they could have Mark Thompson saying Trump 2024.
You could. I mean, it's very true, and you have no control over it.
2024!
Right, exactly.
Lastly, Disney Plus is cracking down on password sharing. The streamer will allow users to add a member outside of their household for $7 a month for Disney Plus Basic or $10 for Disney Plus Premium. Only 1 extra member is allowed per account. Users sharing an account can also subscribe themselves and transfer their member profile to a new account to keep their settings and watch history. Netflix did this last year, and they reported success with low account cancellations. So now everybody wants the extra money. You see how this works. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is a place, Mark, to get a little bit of heaven in your Mark Thompson Show coffee cup.
That's what I've heard, Kim.
It really is. I've got, my husband made me the vanilla tea this morning. It is fantastic. What are you drinking?
I'm doing the Ocotillo Espresso. It's ground for a press, for a French press, and I'm having it right now. In fact, I'll have another sip even as we speak. It's quite good. I've got to send some to John Rothmann. It reminds me that I don't know if he's a coffee drinker, but I'll find out, and I must send him some for his weekly service on our show.
He does. I don't know if he drinks coffee.
I don't know.
He's
feels very clean to me. Yeah,
he's
like
clean
no
living.
drugs, no alcohol, no coffee.
Not even chocolate. Not even
he's
sugar.
like a Mormon. He is Mormon-esque in this regard.
It's true.
I believe. I don't know if that's true, but I'll ask him. We'll ask him.
Well, that just leaves more coffee and tea for us.
Yes,
there's a huge selection. It is at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. do not forget at the end of the road there at your website adventure at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com to put in Mark T at checkout. Altogether, Mark T, that gets you 10% off of your total. And it's lovely to see that discount being taken right at the end.
Yeah, the 10% off.
I've never seen anything like it.
Well, there you go. It's quite the special moment when it does. You do it. Mark T at checkout. Don't forget it.
On to Mr. Rothmann. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Yeah. Right on, everybody. It is so great to have you here. Wednesdays bring a really special guy into our midst. He was our colleague at KGO Radio, which is the big blasting blowtorch of the San Francisco Bay Area that carried a signal across the West. And John Rothmann, historian, lecturer, and just a brilliant talk show host, sidelined like the rest of us. But he's still, I think he's busier now than he was when he was doing his daily radio show. He has a podcast and more. He writes prolifically, and he joins us on Wednesdays. How about it for the professor? He is John Rothmann, everybody.
Mark, welcome back. Hope your mother was fine.
Thank you. She is doing well. And before we begin, want to ask about coffee, chocolate, and those things to which Kim referred. You seem very clean, like you don't have any vices, John. Is that, where are you on this stuff?
I am not a coffee drinker. I must tell you honestly. Good dark chocolate is always welcome, I can tell you. And
how about alcohol? Do you drink alcohol?
No, don't drink at all.
No, that's
In
the
fact,
thing.
With your winery you were dealing with, Kim mentioned to me, or you mentioned to me, maybe getting some grape juice, and that would be a pleasure. I like
Oh, yeah, that Tenuto. They have, I think, non-alcoholic stuff there, too. That's it. So, Kim, we were both speculating as to what you might, you just seem very clean to me. And
I don't drink, I don't smoke. I'm just, my mother used to say that I was very dull.
I think it's great. I mean, look, my parents, and then we'll get into things real quick, but I was just going to mention, people always say to me, "Oh, your parents, you've got good genes. They lived a long time." Yeah, my parents didn't drink, didn't smoke, I drink. Now I've tried to back off because I'm worried about getting dementia. But I see people who drink. They're in their 90s. They're fine, John. You know what I mean?
Look at Winston Churchill.
Thank you. Yeah, he was a big man too. He was like, he didn't miss a meal. So
and he didn't miss a drink.
He didn't drink there. Anyway, so you
so much to drink, he once said, and so little time.
All right. Everybody, enough with the small talk. Let's get to the bad stuff. I'm going to start in the Middle East. Hezbollah firing on Tel Aviv. The Israeli general who's spoken to sources hints at the use of ground troops that would involve an incursion into Lebanon. I wonder if you could reset this for us. I oftentimes talk about Hezbollah because they've become so relevant in the last couple of weeks as really controlling Lebanon, certainly southern Lebanon. It is Hezbollah. Can you speak really to kind of give us a scene setter and then give us your thoughts as to what might happen?
I spoke with friends in Tel Aviv this morning, and I can tell you that they are very concerned. Hezbollah has Iranian-made missiles. This was a ballistic missile. Israel was able to take it down. But here's the nightmare scenario. If we're told they have 150,000 missiles, so cut it in half. Say there's 75,000. If Hezbollah were to fire missiles directly, the Israelis would be devastated because their defense can't handle that many missiles. Our defense system in the United States can't handle that many. And there is an important point. A lot of people ask me, well, what's the solution? And I'll tell you what the problem is. And this applies to Hamas and it applies to Hezbollah. It has to do with the right of Israel to exist. Both Hamas and Hezbollah deny Israel's right to exist. You may be able to achieve a ceasefire or as we have seen since the war in 2006 against Hezbollah, and here we are all these years later as we're continuing again. There's no way to achieve a peace treaty with them because they want Israel destroyed. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's 100% true.
Well,
there are two divisions. Yeah. I should tell you, there are two reserve divisions who've been called up to the border, and it is entirely possible that Israel will go in. What they really want is an 18-mile buffer up to the Litani River. If there can be a buffer to the Litani River, it limits what Hezbollah can do. And may I point one other thing out? I talked about it with Kim last week. Israel has demonstrated their ability to disrupt through technology all of the communications which Hezbollah has established, and frankly, Iran has established. And what Israel accomplished in blowing up the walkie-talkies and the communication system, it's astounding. It is something that will be written about for years and years and years to come. It was an operation that required some years to put together. It is clear that they really nailed it. So what will happen now? I think the best thing that can happen is for Hezbollah to just stop. But that's not going to happen any more than Hamas will just stop. The people who are determined to destroy Israel are determined to destroy Israel, and they're going to take every opportunity to do it.
Let me just understand then, because there are two different perspectives at minimum on what's going on. One is a little bit of what you said, which is the technological genius associated with essentially creating those pagers and walkie-talkies in a way at some point during the supply chain, obviously, so they become explosive devices. That is an act of genius, and you could say it terrorizes the terrorists. That's one side of it. The other side of it is there's a randomness to it. So these things are blowing up. I'm sure some Hezbollah fighters were hit. Probably some people who were not Hezbollah were hit. Certainly, we read about those who were kind of adjacent to the explosions being involved. And so you create a kind of argument that what is Israel doing? They're provoking Hezbollah even more. I'll let you speak in a second. Then you say, well, they're actually anticipating and indicating to Hezbollah, look, don't try the crap that you guys are doing. We've already moved a bunch of our population away from the Lebanese border because you guys have been bombing and creating issues there. And so this is our way of throwing you a brushback pitch of saying, hey, we are reading your mail. We will tell you that if you guys F with us, we are coming after you hard. So help me sort through this, because there is a considerable feeling, John, that, Israel it's hard. I feel like the expectations are so great for on the Israelis. They're not allowed to prosecute a war the way many other countries might. But that said, it does seem as though their aggressiveness may be excessive.
Let me just point out to you that since October 6th, and we're coming up on that anniversary, which will also be fascinating to talk about, that about 80,000, some say as many as 100,000 Israelis were not moved. They were forced out of their homes because Hezbollah has continued to attack in the north, even as Hamas was attacking in the south. What the Israelis are doing now is sending a message. You're precisely correct. Don't mess with us. We have superiority, and we will use that superiority. The fact that this well-planned operation with the pagers and the walkie-talkies, it was a message. We know what you're doing. We're going to stop you from doing it, and we're going to do everything we can to defend ourselves. And that's what any nation must do. Can you imagine if on the Canadian-American border or the Mexican-American border, 100,000 of our citizens had to move because they were under constant fire? We wouldn't put up with it for a minute. And I'm telling you, the Israelis have used great patience. The problem is when you talk about mediation, Mark, when you talk about some solution, mark this well. The intent of Hezbollah and Hamas is the destruction of Israel. Whatever agreement may be reached is a temporary agreement from their point of view. And it is not a peace. It is simply an agreement that is temporary. And I can tell you, the Israelis are not going to put up with it. By the way, you know who's cheering the Israelis on? Christian Lebanese. The Christian Lebanese. the Maronites, who also feel threatened by Hezbollah. But the problem is there's nothing you can do to prevent this kind of discussion about destroying Israel. How do you cut a deal? How do you make peace with people who want you destroyed? That's the problem. Do you think it's frustrating for you and for me? Imagine my friends in Israel, who, by the way, are committed to peace. They are committed to finding a solution. But Hezbollah doesn't even call it Israel. It calls it the Zionist entity. So how do you deal with it?
There is, then I want to move on to the domestic political situation.
Is there something going on domestically?
Yeah, exactly. The idea somehow that you'd call upon, which is what's happening now, Iran to get involved, that creates the kind of conflagration that everybody
They're already
fears.
involved.
Well, they're
Who's supplying
involved
the
with
missiles?
they're involved with weapons, but to actually fire on Israel, that's the call from Hezbollah, as you know, this morning. They're saying we want Iran to actually get involved in this.
Iran is involved. They're supplying the Houthis. They're supplying Hezbollah. They're supplying Hamas. Where do you think these weapons come from? The moon? No, they come from Iran. And our problem with Iran is a real problem. You heard this morning that the United States government briefed Donald Trump on the fact that the Iranians have now threatened Donald Trump's life. They're out to get him. And if you listen to Donald Trump this morning, and I did listen to Donald Trump this morning, but we have good reason to be afraid. And the message this country must send is if you go after any of our elected officials, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. That's the ball game as far as we're concerned with Iran. Our concern about Iran and the reason we don't move aggressively against them is several-fold. First, they do possess nuclear weapons. Nobody admits it, but they do, and that's a serious issue. Number two is the question of Iranian oil and how the oil is used, and it is being distributed and it is being used. The other concern we have is Saudi Arabia, because the Saudis have a mortal enemy in Iran, and they're worried about what Iran is going to do, and that's the other issue. If Iran really were to proclaim it has a nuclear weapon, the Saudis demand that we either give them one or that we put them under their nuclear umbrella. Well, they're already under our umbrella. We're already protecting the Saudi family. Mark, they may be barbarians, but they're our barbarians, and that's the key.
I want to move on.
Why? This is so interesting and
it
solvable before we go to Kim's news.
Yeah, it's completely. It's a situation we're not going to be able to resolve before Kim's news.
Wait till next week, Mark. We'll have a lot to talk about. Believe me. Go ahead.
By the way, John, interesting news in the world of Trump and the attempted assassination. I saw that the judge in that case, who may be handling that case, is everybody's favorite concierge judge. It's Donald Trump's concierge judge, who is Cannon. What's her first name? Eileen Cannon.
Eileen Cannon.
Yeah. The Trump-appointed judge, she's the one who recently dismissed the case against Donald Trump on the retention of classified documents after he left office. There are charges against this new suspect, Ryan Routh. He's 58, and there'll be 2 gun charges, etc. And by the way, speaking of just asking for Iran to do things, this guy, this would-be assassin, apparently had asked for Iran to assassinate Donald Trump. I don't know that he has a line into Iran. He sounds like he's a little like he stepped off the curb, but that doesn't mean it. He's not a super dangerous dude.
No, he is dangerous, and he did try. And if he succeeded, the disaster for our American political system. We have to protect our candidates. I do want to say a word about the Secret Service. They did a magnificent job that day, and Donald Trump keeps saying they did a magnificent job that day, and the Republicans in Congress are still attacking the Secret Service. I mean, it's a complete, it's unbelievable. By the way, you mentioned a judge. There is now an order, and tomorrow the news will break, and if you want me back for that, I'll be happy to do it. You have the case against Donald Trump on January 6th. Smith is going to submit it, and my understanding, based on conversations I had today with friends involved in this, is the question is whether the evidence submitted by Mike Pence will be submitted and allowed, and Mark Meadows, the president's chief of staff, the president's vice president, both of whom have given testimony, evidently, that is a scathing indictment of Donald Trump's conduct and his willingness to overthrow the American democratic system. if that is permitted and the indictment is going to be released, or the statement is going to be released, whether or not it'll be allowed as part of the indictment, that's a good question. But it is something that should concern every single one of us. Because if in
Donald
fact
Trump does not want that testimony to which you've referred
he's
anywhere
fighting
near
with everything he has, and he's claiming the Supreme Court, which said it isn't relevant. You can't go to a Mark Meadows or a Mike Pence. Well, let me tell you something. We have a right to know, and the American people, before we vote on November 5th, have a right to know whether the former president of the United States tried to overthrow a democratically held election.
The election, John, which has already begun because people are voting, as you're aware, in states where the mail-in ballots have gone out, is there any substantial movement? Well, maybe substantial is the wrong word. I think the answer to that would have to be no. But is there any relevant movement, movement that might be determinative that we could still see between now and the beginning of November?
Well, look, there's a war going on in the Republican Party. You have to understand this. Donald Trump made a statement the other day, and maybe Albert can pull it up, which was filled with contradictions. It was vote, and then he said, but don't vote. We wait until election day to vote. We don't favor early voting. J.T. Vance is saying vote early. The Republican National Committee is urging people to vote early. Donald Trump is still reluctant to have people vote early. In fact, Donald Trump is saying, and this is a very interesting point, in Georgia, the election board voted 3-2. The Democrat and an independent voted against it. That ballots cast in Georgia have to be hand counted in order to prevent any, on the day of the election, to prevent any distortion in results. The Republicans have a problem. The Republican National Committee was correct in saying, get out there and vote. Let's do what the Democrats are doing. Donald Trump doesn't trust it, and so he's giving these contradictory messages. For the Republican Party, it's just terrible. And I wish Donald Trump would listen to look, I'm not for Donald Trump for president, obviously, but people have a right to vote, and they have a right to vote early. And for Donald Trump to say that people voting early shouldn't be allowed, and the other thing he wants is that no ballots be counted after midnight on election day. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, we've seen that. If Trump's ahead at midnight on election day, then he wants the vote stopped. If Trump's behind on election day at midnight, then he wants them to keep counting. And then ultimately, if Trump's behind, he wants to challenge the legitimacy of the vote.
And that's what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I have friends both in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party who are saying they're gearing up for major election challenges. Look, I was invited to give commentary to several different organizations and podcasts the day after the election. And I said, what are you talking about the day after? The day after may not be the result. When we talk, when you and I get together on the Wednesday after, a week after the election, we may still not know the result unless
oh my God, I
it
think
is
it's
a
very clear it
landslide
probably
election.
won't. Yeah, maybe in a landslide. And this we can just kiss off on quickly, and that is the changing of rules here at the 11th hour. When it comes to election rules being changed, this is a remarkable thing the GOP
Look what
is
happened
doing.
in Nebraska. The Republican governor of Nebraska has killed the idea of changing how the electoral votes are tabulated there. They do it by congressional district rather than by who carries the state. Trump and his people, and they sent Lindsey Graham into Nebraska to urge the Republican Party to insist that it be the vote of the state, not that individual congressional district, which has been the precedent in that state for many years. And it's clear the reason why. It could come down to one electoral vote. You can do the tabulations. I could do them for you, or you can see it. So it's very interesting. And the same thing in Georgia. Please note that Governor Kemp and Raffensperger, who's the Secretary of State, have both opposed the 3-2 vote by the Electoral Commission in Georgia. The Republicans, frankly, talk about dishonest politics. That's what's happening. And I say it with regret. And by the way, just so we're clear, if Democrats did what the Republicans are trying to do now, I'd be just as angry.
Sure. They're gaming the system. It's one thing to try to pick up the people's voice and to see it represented in the vote, but it's another thing completely to suppress and prevent the people's voice.
Can I say just a quick word? I know. We
Wait 1 second, John. I've got this guy paid money to talk to you. Hang on a second. Okay. Brian Reich.
Big shout out.
Let's get our shout out straight. Prayers and blessings to Israel for their strength and ability. Thank you, John, for your facts and insights. Wow, there you go from Brian Reich. Big shout out.
Thank you, Brian.
Aren't you glad?
I was going to talk about the race for governor of North Carolina because I don't.
Yeah, please do, because that's yet another situation that changes here at the last minute.
Yeah, that's why North Carolina is now competitive. And that's why Kamala Harris is going back into North Carolina. The Republican candidate for governor of North Carolina, he's not related to you. His name is Thompson, I think.
Yeah,
I know. I'm only kidding you. The simple truth is the guy's a nutcase. I want to note that Governor Kemp of Georgia has already withdrawn his endorsement. The Republican Governors Conference is refusing to endorse or to give any money to this wacko who called himself a black Nazi. I mean,
yeah.
Now, to his defense, he has said he never said it. This is all a myth. It's not true at all.
Yeah.
But he hasn't taken any legal action against CNN. And frankly, most of his campaign staff have resigned. And clearly, he's not going to carry the state. Now,
that's the amazing thing is to see this guy who had Donald Trump fingerprints all over him. Essentially, he was elevated by Donald Trump. I mean,
That's
Rothmann,
correct.
You know this. I mean, he would not be the candidate for the governorship without Trump having handpicked him and talking about him as a contemporary Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King on steroids, he said.
Right. I mean, it's suggesting that his oratory is so great, and his oratory is great. The guy doesn't stop, and even as they have him really dead to rights on all of this stuff, they know that he's shown up in all these chat rooms. And by the way, as we've said on this show, I don't really have an issue with him in porn chat rooms or on do whatever porn thing you want, man. Whatever your kink is, I don't care. But don't then talk about how vile the LGBTQ community is. Don't talk about how vile any kind of sexual perversion may be. He talks about trans rights, and he talks about
it's disgusting.
He wants to tear away all the freedoms associated with.
Here's the question, Mark. How does it
communities.
affect the up ballot? That is to say, Trump is at the top of the ballot for the Republican Party in that state. If, in fact, Thompson goes down, which he is going to go down,
Robinson is his name. Robinson.
Will he drag Trump down with him? And that's the real question. It could do real damage. So, by the way, Trump would not appear with him, has not had him at the rally in North Carolina, is keeping him as far away as he can, but neither Trump nor Vance have denounced him.
Yeah. He's now he can't get him. You know, the other thing about him, and then we can move on, is he was one of those guys who sort of insinuated himself on Trump rallies. Like he'd show up to Trump rallies uninvited because he was trying to draft off of Trump. You know, he's trying to get altitude off of Trump, and it worked. I mean, Trump became this guy who gave him all of these super laudatory introductions.
Kudos, endorsed him, and put him over the top against the potentially established Republican candidate who was defeated in the primary.
Exactly. It absolutely wild. All right, so now we move to Kamala Harris. She's going to be speaking on the economy today. As you know, there's been a lot of conversation around the fact that there are not enough specifics out of Kamala Harris on the economy. The specifics that Trump has offered on the economy, as you know, have been rejected even by GOP. I mean, it's an amazing thing. His tariff thing, and you remember
John Deere, he's talking about 200% tariff on John Deere products.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Yeah. So his America First plan, which he talked about, it was a disaster in many ways in bringing more industrial production to this country during his first 4 years. And now he appears to be just supercharging as you've suggested, the tariff thing and every other demand and strategy that he would have economically, to the point that many GOP economists are saying this would be horrendous for the economy if this stuff actually got into.
There's no question. So here's the question for you, Mark. Why is it still so close?
I think it boils down to grievance. I've always felt that this is a grievance-fueled world politically now at top of ticket, so that what fueled Donald Trump the first time was the essential notion that he hates the same things that I do. And so therefore, I'm going to vote for him. He hates those people who have taken my country away. However you, again, square that. That's the beauty of the Trump populist message. It's such BS that you can make it fit with anybody's life.
I just want to say a quick word about Florida. Florida should be a Republican state. You understand what is happening in Florida. First of all, the Haitians in Florida are not going to vote for Donald Trump. Not snowball's chance in hell. And that hurts him because Florida is in contention because there's also the question of a woman's right to choose on the ballot. So I just talked to a buddy of mine in Florida who said to me, Trump hasn't got Florida locked up. And that's very important. The other thing is, did you take a look at the polls in Texas? Cruz is losing in one poll by 1%. The fact that
Cruz is really being challenged
behind,
for the Senate seat.
He should be cruising, if you'll pardon the bad pun, he should be cruising to victory. And yet he is, last night on the Hannity program, he was appealing to people, send me money, send me money. I'm in trouble.
Let me go back to Florida for a second. You think that there's a possibility that the Democrats could actually, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean,
it may not happen, but the Haitian community is so angry that Donald Trump and JT Vance are talking about they're eating cats and dogs.
Right.
The Haitian community is a large community in Florida. They are citizens. They vote. And I think he's done himself real damage. The same thing applies in Florida. And it was a gamble the Democrats took, but they put something on the ballot about women's choice. That's going to be on the ballot. So I don't think Florida is going to go for the Democrats. I really don't. But I think it hurts Trump when these kinds of things happen. And you will note, please, that neither Vance nor Trump have repudiated this crazy notion that the Haitians were eating dogs and cats. One of the most interesting things for me on October 1st will be the debate that takes place in which Vance stands on a stage debating his vice presidential opponent. This will certainly be an issue. And I can't wait to see him confronted with it hard and heavy.
How important is that debate, the vice presidential debate coming up next week?
No vice presidential debate is critical. Remember when the debate between Quayle and Benson, Benson defeated Quayle. I knew Jack Kennedy, you're no Jack Kennedy. Didn't matter. But I'll tell you what may matter in this one is, again, the credibility of Vance, who nobody knows, who is a man who has taken very extreme positions, including election denial. And if that can play out, I'm going to do a whole commentary on this, but vice presidential nominees don't matter unless it was Texas with Lyndon Johnson in 1960. Because Lyndon Johnson, if he had not been the vice presidential running mate, Kennedy would never have carried Texas.
Right.
So
and that's old school politics where you have a vice presidential candidate on.
But I don't think the vice president, people don't vote for a vice president, they vote for a president.
John, we love our visits with you.
Do you mean it's over?
Troubled world that we live in.
Do you mean it's over?
Sadly, all things must.
You didn't mention Ukraine.
Yeah.
Let everybody beware.
Hindsight, I wouldn't have done it.
What?
Listen to what Zelensky had to say about Ukraine today, and understand that's another one. Quickly, I know we've got to go. JT Vance supposed.
I haven't seen his comments today, so you can break some news for me. Anyway.
Oh,
I haven't
he
seen.
gave a speech to the United Nations. He appealed to the world. He's relying on the United States. He's meeting with President Biden in order to present his plan for some solution. But the important thing is Trump refuses to declare what he'll do about Ukraine, and JT Vance is opposed to any aid to Ukraine. And may I just point out, in the Midwest live a lot of people of Ukrainian descent. How are they going to vote? Are they going to let Ukraine go the way that Putin wants? I mean, there are so many areas, so many dimensions, and I'm just grateful to you, Mark, for allowing me to vet some of this with you on the Mark Thompson program. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you support the Mark Thompson program. Mark's doing a great good deed, and Kim McAllister too. And
oh wow, thank you, pal. You're lovely to be with us, and we really enjoy you and love your insights. I was going to Kim or Albert, maybe you can find the John Rothmann. Here it is. The podcast is Around the Political World with John Rothmann, and you get a little piece of Rothmann every day, and which is a pretty cool thing. And he also writes. He's prolific with his opinions, both in the audio and in the written word. The written word comes where, John? It's at Voice of SF?
You can go to the Voice of San Francisco. I do 10 minutes every day, weekday, dealing with San Francisco politics. Today it was on the question of cell phones and being banned. Gavin Newsom signed something into law. You'll get a kick out of it. So the Voice of San Francisco under podcast. And would you please, Mark, send my warmest good wishes to your mother?
I shall indeed. John Rothmann, everybody. Thank you, John. Good stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
All right. Great to have everyone here. It is our Wednesday visit with Rothmann. We just wrapped it up. You can check it out on the podcast if you'd like. Yes, there's a lot of disagreement on any number of things. Also, I think a lot of agreement on any number of things. This is from earlier. I'm just catching up with a few things when it comes to comments. I've been saying for weeks, says Teacher Lori, that the mayor should sue for the cost of extra services needed because of the lies spread now by Trump and Vance, who are facing criminal charges for false claims about Springfield's Haitian community. You know, it is true that community's had to literally spend money to handle this overflow of emergency calls and protesters and harassment that they've now endured, even though this is an invented problem, invented by J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. So it is true that there is a group, a Haitian group, here it is, Ranting Teacher says, finally, Haitian Bridge Alliance filed criminal complaint in Clark County Municipal Court against former President Trump and Senator Vance, accusing them of inciting violence and spreading dangerous information. This may be a long-shot suit, but and a long-shot legal maneuver. They actually want them arrested. But after weeks of lobbing these accusations in about Springfield, they said enough. And we want you to, sadly, the only kind of remedy oftentimes you can find in America is in court. And we want the court to handle this. They've actually called for the arrest of both. Isn't that right, Kim?
It is. It's interesting in Ohio that a citizen is able to file a criminal complaint. Then the judge looks at whether there's merit for that case to move forward, which is different than other states where all criminal complaints would have to first be reviewed by the district attorney. So it's an interesting process they have there, but they're going straight for criminal charges. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. The next stop is the judge.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty big time.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Well, it is clear that they have created this out of whole cloth. They have created this. There's no question about that. But what the resolution might be is not clear. You know?
If you said something that caused bomb threats and violence and chaos and a whole group of people to feel like they were insecure in their new home, wouldn't you feel mortified and horrible about it?
In the quest for power, I think there's
no feeling mortified.
Right. I think
there's just moving forward. Doesn't matter what you say or who you hurt while you say it.
Well, I mean, that's clearly the track record. I mean, it's the lust for power that is behind all of this. This is as simple as the ends justify the means. You see no evidence of there being any adherence to any sort of moral or ethical standard when it comes to achieving this power. Look at the Supreme Court. They have an agenda that they are following with a ruthlessness. It has no adherence to law. They are simply pursuing the agenda that they all have to create a theocracy here in this country. And now, again, the theocrats, they want that power to do that. And then those who are associated with other aspects that are generally business related, the Elon Musks of the world, they want that power. They know they'll have a puppet president in Donald Trump. Trump will be a puppet to Musk. Trump will be a puppet to anybody with money. So those concerns associated with big oil, with big pharma, it doesn't. If you're big enough, you've got money, and you can, uncork a flattering comment in talking to Trump, he'll be your pal. And you essentially achieve power, and then you do whatever you want to do for your business and for your world. And that is exactly what's happening. All of these different forces that are motivated by both commercial concerns, business concerns. I'm talking about the Musks of the world and the big oil of the world. They're coming together with the theocrats who have a philosophical underpinning. They want to see America move into the future as a Christian nation. And even among Christians, there are different versions of Christianity. So
that's just not the point of America.
But they're all coming together around this guy, Trump, because he's a perfect guy for them. He's an empty vessel. He'll push back on nothing. All you need to do is ingratiate yourself to him, pledge loyalty to him in all the different ways that you can, and then shower him with money. Show him all the ways that he can personally benefit Trump Inc. from an association with you. And so all of these different forces come together, the corporate, the personal, the theological, they all come together around Donald Trump. And that's why this empty vessel that is Donald Trump is the perfect guy for all of these different interests. And that's where we are.
There is a group of Haitian immigrants in my community, which I think is interesting. I didn't know, but in Petaluma, which is in, the Bay Area here in the North Bay, my son got in the car one day after school. He said, "Mom, there's a new girl in my class." And he's been practicing French. He's for the last year on Duolingo, kind of lingering. He said, "I got to use my French today in class, and I was the only one who could speak to her." He doesn't really speak French. He just dabbles in it. I said, "Oh, she's from France?" And he said, "I don't think so." I said, "Okay, well, where is she from?" He's like, I don't know. And one of the other moms said there's a group of Haitian immigrants that just arrived, and maybe this is about, 6 months ago. And there are several new students at the school that speak French, and they're from Haiti. I would be so upset if anyone made these people feel anything less than completely welcomed here.
No, it's already happening. It's absolutely crazy. They need a scapegoat. They need a story. They need all of these things to swing people's allegiances, borderline votes, and they need to invent as a result. So
I'm sure she thought, "You don't really speak French, kid. Stop talking to me."
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll bet she appreciated, just even a little bit of an effort.
Maybe. So I don't know.
Yeah. Albert, is there anything in the chat that I need to attend to, please, sir?
Albert, thank you.
Is there? No?
We have some super stickers that came in last hour that I'm not sure. I think we got to Wes, but this might be his second one.
Thank you, Wes.
Big shout out.
Pertinent comments, Albert? It's not always about money. What is it with you kids? I'm just thinking about things that I need to
one of us has
to
think about that here, at least out of the three.
Say that again. What did he say?
One of us has to think about this out of the three of us.
Oh, I'm glad I asked you to repeat that. Yeah.
Did we talk about Spencer?
I think we got Spencer, but thank you very much.
Did we talk about Gene?
I don't think we talked about Gene, though.
Big shout out.
$3 super sticker. Thank you. I'll just round this off, and then I'm going to get to law and disorder. Is it time for armed security on public buses? Asks Edward Lee. Well,
big shout out.
It's time for armed security all over the place. I mean, but you just can't. You don't have those assets at hand for a bus that's running late at night in Los Angeles, right? You can't put any kind of armed security officer there. Spencer Jaffe, quickly.
Big shout out.
Thank you for $1. Trump needs to stick to tartar sauce and leave tariffs alone, says Luis.
Big shout out.
$5 super sticker. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. The Amish generally don't get involved in politics and have very low voter turnout. Oh, I don't know what that's related to, but probably Pennsylvania, where a lot of Amish people live. As you know, Amish, I'm going to anger a lot of people. I say things that oftentimes lead to people never coming back again. Here is one of those things. I'm about to do it. The Amish have been dining out on the simple life. The Amish could rig up some kind of loom machine counting system.
Maybe better than what we've got.
Who said that? Viewfinder's president. That's great. I'm going to give you mad respect for knowing the loom.
Big shout out.
The loom world of the Amish. Loom's got computers their start. I didn't know that. No.
I didn't either.
Very well done. The Amish, and I'll just spend 60 seconds on this. They have been dining out on being sort of the Luddite. I don't want to, have any technology associated. We don't have cars. We don't have, it's a beautiful, simple life with an adherence to the word of the Lord. It's informed by steep religious beliefs and an adherence to a kind of distinct life independent of technology. They've been dining out on that for years. It's just so great. Everything's so simple in Amish country. Wouldn't it be great if we all just could get rid of all those distractions of technology and of the world encroaching on us and just live the simple life that the Amish do? Yeah, well, you know what? That's a load of BS. And you know it's a load of BS.
What?
That is a cloistered community in which there is rampant sexual abuse.
Ew.
There is rampant patriarchal dominance of women. And it is a despicable thing that is not only cultured in that world, but protected from the outside world. So all the things I'm talking about never really gets out unless it's leaked out by those who've left the Amish life. And so I see the Amish as a fraud. At their best, they're great. I get it. I mean, it's a simple life and adherence to God. But what they practically are, from a practical standpoint, is a dominant patriarchal culture that, and you can say, Mark, the women seem happy. I mean, what's the problem? So it's a patriarchy. I get it. Most religions are patriarchy. Were it just positions within a hierarchy, it would be one thing. But I think what happens in Amish communities never gets out, and it never gets out for a reason, because if you complain, you're excommunicated. And essentially, it permits any number of aspects of heinous acts to continue in that community. That's my word on the Amish.
I had no idea
Exactly.
that you were so anti-Amish. I had no idea.
I'm AA, Kim. I'm AA, anti-Amish. Mark isn't wrong on this from what I've heard of the community. Thank you, Eric. Eric moves to the head of the class.
Big shout out.
I want you to sit right up front, Eric, in the next... But Mark, they make some great furniture, says Tony.
Big shout out.
I take it you're not in the market for an Amish dining room table.
Yeah, my God. I just really am not... all right, everyone. I want to get into some law and disorder, if I can, please. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash the like button, and you can give us a thumbs up. It costs you nothing. We appreciate it.
With your iron rod.
Adios, Amish viewers. It's been nice knowing you.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Yes, sayonara, sucker. Sorry, Albert. I didn't.
Sayonara, sucker.
Thank you. Very well done. Terrible world. I lived in Pennsylvania for many years, so I come by this knowledge firsthand. Oh, wow. Thank you, Ronnie. Yeah. Well, once again, so it's not an Amish paradise, says D. No, apparently it's not. I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, so I'll move the Amish talk to the back burner. And now
that was not on the agenda today, but I'm fascinated.
Yeah. Well, we are, again, we're AA, anti-Amish. All right. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you can't buy their furniture and their little heaters and all the stuff that but again, don't buy all of that if you want, but don't buy the BS. Okay. Mini-Me was from the Amish country. He was the result of a lot of genetic disease. It's common there, says Billy. Wow, is that right? I didn't know that.
No, was that Vern Troyer?
Vern Troyer, very well done, Albert. Yeah. Mark, you'll be hearing from the Amish community, maybe.
I don't think they're going to get any of these messages. So
yeah,
we could go
Try
on
the Amish butter sometimes, says Sandy. They sell it at Safeway. It's so good. Look at that. People standing up for Amish butter. Come for the butter and stay for the sexual abuse, everyone. That's what I'm saying. There you go. Really, Mark? Do you have to reach out at the Amish? You know.
You're on a roll now, so you might as well answer this one.
Yeah. Let me get off on the Mennonites for a minute. Let me tell you. All these little cloistered communities, a lot of bad stuff happens there. All right, Albert, I don't know why you distracted us with this. Just lost his one Amish listener, says Mars. Yeah. Indeed. Thank you for being here, everyone. Smash the like button.
With your iron rod.
We're a homegrown show started in San Francisco, California on a radio station there. The station went away. It was a really big talk radio station, but for a lot of reasons related to corporate and related to a changing broadcast landscape, the station went away. We've moved to YouTube. We love having you here, and we also feature this right away across all the podcast universe, meaning if you are wanting an audio version of this podcast, you can hear it across all the major podcast outlets from Apple to Google and so on. So please avail yourself of that as well. Now, and thanks for the support. We're Patreon, PayPal. There are links to both under all our videos and, of course, at themarkthompsonshow.com. We like to feature things that are going on in the courtroom, high-profile court cases, and also just the wildness of many aspects of society, both domestically and internationally. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones's InfoWars show likely to be shut down within a few months after a federal bankruptcy.
Sayonara,
judge.
sucker.
Yeah, that is definitely.
Sayonara, sucker.
Yeah. He is someone who's made millions and tens of millions of dollars off of that InfoWars show, selling supplements, selling any number of things, selling, I think, memberships to the show.
What a despicable man.
Now he will sell off the assets. I will sign on to that description of him. I agree. He'll sell off the assets of his media company, Free Speech Systems, because the bankruptcy judge has ruled that he will have to do so to meet his obligations in the judgment. Billy says, no InfoWars, how will I live? Net proceeds from any sales, again, of all of those things, these are the assets of his media company, will go to Sandy Hook families who won $1.5 billion in damages for Jones spreading the lies of the 2012 school shooting that he said it never happened. Some of Jones's followers harassed and threatened those families for years. Imagine that. I mean, again, you know the story. It's been out there for years, but it's loathsome on a level that is inconceivable. Attorneys for a group of the families calling Tuesday's decision by the bankruptcy judge a significant step forward toward a fair and equitable resolution for all of the families. Now his assets will be sold, and to quote the attorney for one of the families, Alex Jones will no longer own or control the company he built. This brings the families closer to their goal of holding him accountable for the harm he has caused. Excuse me. The court appointed a trustee for Jones's personal bankruptcy case, and that trustee has already begun the process of auctioning off the components of Free Speech Systems. That's the parent company of InfoWars. Listed for sale is everything: production equipment, domain names, InfoWars vitamins and supplements, online store. That's all for sale. They're auctioning it off.
Can't wait to get my hands on some of that.
All the proceeds will go to paying off these families. There are already several parties that are expressing interest in buying the assets, according to the bankruptcy trustee. The bidders still unknown. The sale process starts with sealed bids, and then open auctions are set for November 13th and then again December 10th if needed. The fact that there have been apparently people or entities sniffing around the intellectual property assets, social media accounts. I mean, it was a huge army of followers that he built. And so people are interested in some of those assets that are related to that, to marshaling or getting to, reaching a lot of those people who were big Alex Jones fans. Dave says, I usually don't agree with people being sued into destitution, but not this guy. Destitution is a ding word, certainly. But not this guy. He should be on the corner begging for change. They should seize everything the guy owns. He is someone for whom there was no bottom. I agree. And sadly, there's a lot of company for that kind of person right now. Put in a bid for his studio setup. Time to upgrade. Thank you, Mars. Thank you. The ShamWow pitchman of hate. Exactly. That's what he was doing. I mean, I can give you more details, but that is essentially it. You've got a fight going on now over the real Alex Jones X.com account, and his attorneys are saying that's the property of Jones's world as a natural person. It doesn't relate to his business. And so you can see there is a legal tug of war going on, and it would violate Alex Jones's right to his privacy if you were to give that up. We can ask David Katz about that. We're actually going to ask him about I've got a lot of stuff actually to ask him about. We'll ask him about the Haitian case that's being brought against Donald Trump, all of that tomorrow. The Truth versus Alex Jones on HBO, really, really good documentary about Jones' behavior regarding Sandy Hook. Thank you, Randy. We will check that out. That's not the only thing going on. I mean, when it comes to bankruptcies, you know, one of the gold medalists is Rudy Giuliani, everybody. He loves that bankruptcy, and he loves trying to avoid paying that judgment that he got for defaming those two innocent Georgia poll workers, election workers. Rudy Giuliani owes $300,000 now, the bankruptcy judge is saying, to the firm that worked on his bankruptcy case. So he's not only trying to stiff those to whom he has a financial obligation because of the defamatory speech, but also he's trying to skate on paying the accounting firm that is tracing his money. So he's been told that he has to pay a bill of $300,000 for this forensic accounting firm's work that traced his money in this bankruptcy proceeding. There was a dispute over how much Giuliani owes to the accounting firm. It's called Global Data Risk. It was the last vestige of his efforts earlier this year to hold off creditors. You know, he owes them, $150 million. So Giuliani had said to the judge in the U.S. bankruptcy court in White Plains, New York, that the fees of the accounting firm, like billing for meetings, travel, interview time, as they researched his assets for the creditors, that should be reduced, that bill. But the judge is saying no. And in fact, the judge is giving the accounting firm nearly everything that they were after. Quote, there was an alarming and inappropriate lack of financial transparency by the debtor, which led to the need for this work. Giuliani, of course, dropped his bankruptcy case because this is over the summer. The federal judge grew really impatient with the whole way in which Giuliani was hiding assets. There was a general lack of transparency. That's why Giuliani knew that there was no real chance. And the bankruptcy had blocked, of course, any payment to the Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. So at that time, they couldn't seize his condos or any of that because of this bankruptcy proceeding. But now it continues. They're in court trying to force the sale of Giuliani's property, including a penthouse co-op apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, a Florida condo, both those assets worth millions. Freeman and Moss are theoretically the first in line on a whole list of people that Giuliani owes. The jury awarded the mother and daughter $150 million because Giuliani defamed them after the 2020 election. Doug McNeely says Jones and Giuliani both should be left penniless and living on the streets. Wow. Thank you for the super chat.
Big shout out.
Yeah, I think that Many agree. I mean, it's pretty dark what both these guys did, and they don't deserve any benefit of any doubt. Anyway, Giuliani being pursued by two entities, if you want to think of it that way, at minimum, right? It's the Georgia election workers who actually are seeking to liquidate some of his assets so that some part of the $150 million judgment can be paid. And now, this accounting firm that was critical in revealing Giuliani assets, and now that's about $300,000 that he has to pay. There is a major case going down, and we're going to talk about it in great detail tomorrow. Mark it on your calendar if you still have a calendar that marks, because tomorrow I'm going to talk to David Katz. Trump only handpicks the best people there, says John. Indeed. I want to talk to David Katz about my favorite person in government right now. It's close. She's in a, I don't know, Sheldon Whitehouse is one of my favorites too. But I am telling you that the FTC, and didn't they feature Lena Khan on 60 Minutes? I think she was on 60 Minutes this past week. She is one of the great driving forces behind tackling monopolies in this country and creating competition that capitalism is built on. So everybody who is listening and watching who claims to some ownership of capitalists, you should know that the real work of capitalism comes with competition. I want you to note this quickly, and then I want to get to Belinda Weymouth. The United States now is going after Visa, accusing Visa of monopoly in the debit card world. Again, they have the majority of debit cards in the U.S., and it's suggested that they unfairly imposed fees on merchants and did other things to get rid of competition in the space. And the Justice Department has just filed an antitrust lawsuit against Visa, accusing them of unfairly stifling competition in debit cards. And this will turn into a much bigger case. We'll talk to David Katz about it tomorrow. Wow. But this, if allowed to continue, could change the way in which a lot of these corporate behemoths have been able to dominate, particularly the banking world. Merchants and banks get into what are essentially de facto exclusive agreements with Visa. And that is a monopoly. And again, it's a monopoly that comes in large part by threatening or by imposing higher fees on merchants. And so you end up with a monopoly that perpetuates itself. I'll talk to David Katz about it tomorrow, but that lawsuit has begun
Visa,
in
by the
U.S.
way,
court. What's that?
Visa's headquartered in the Bay Area. They're in Foster City.
Oh, wow. Well,
they were in San Francisco, but in '85 they moved to Foster City. So,
well, the Justice Department isn't looking to put them out of business, but they are looking to deter monopolistic behavior by big companies, and they are bringing an antitrust lawsuit against them. And that is Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Little Law and Disorder, and
smash it with your iron rod.
Smash the thumbs up if you would. It helps us in the world of YouTube in some way that I don't understand. And I love one thing that I do understand completely. I love this great planet Earth, my friends. It really
is fantastic.
It's pretty fantastic, this planet Earth, the only planet we've got. And I'm hoping that we're all here for many years to come. But when things happen on the planet that we need to know about, we try to feature those things in a segment we called It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid. No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide through this world of the environment is eco-journalist Belinda Weymouth. Hi, Belinda. Nice to have you on board.
It's good to be back. Hello.
Yeah, you were on the road for a while, and you know you do these eco missions, and it's a very exciting world. You've got some solar-powered van or some. It's crazy, but it's terrific. It's I'd love to have you back with us polluters. So now let me ask you about what you have for today. I saw a huge plastic story, and I thought of you.
Yeah.
Is that where you want to begin?
Yeah, we have to begin with that because what California is doing, suing ExxonMobil, is huge. And this one's for you, Kim, because I know you're all about the plastic pollution. So, and it's also for us, Mark, because we love the ocean and we care about plastic pollution. And the fact that, California is, this big, powerful state is saying, hey, petrochemical companies, enough is enough. And you have to quit with the deception that recycling works, because it doesn't. And we have known for decades that it doesn't work. But just like the oil industry has done with the burning of fossil fuels and tried to make out that it's not as bad as it is, and really kind of tried to, squash the information that they knew. I mean, they knew back in the 80s that putting CO2 and methane up into the atmosphere was changing the chemistry of the atmosphere. It was heating it up and was going to lead to this crazy weather change, which we are seeing. This has been a very intense year. And they also knew back in 1972 that plastic was getting into the ocean and it wasn't going anywhere. There was a scientist, a marine biologist, who went up to the Sargasso Sea. This is the remote northern Atlantic. He wanted to look at seaweed. And what did he find when he pulled up his seaweed samples? It was full of plastic. So this guy, his name is Edward Carpenter, and in 1972, he published 2 peer-reviewed papers in the Science Journal, a very reputable science journal, talking about plastic pollution and how it was ending up in the ocean and not going anywhere. And the petrochemical companies, the plastics industry has been mobilized ever since. And they have been mobilized they went to this guy's office to threaten him basically about these research papers. And his bosses got threatened too. And they were like, hey, don't talk about plastic pollution ending up in the ocean. And, it's, there's lovely David Attenborough. Yes, he's really motivated to talk about plastic right now too. I mean, unlike, CO2 and methane, we can see the plastic pollution. It's very, very, very visible. And we have been really fed this lie by this industry that recycling works. And there's a fantastic quote that I've got here. So back in 1994, this was the VP for ExxonMobil. He's in a staff meeting. And of recycling, he says, "We are committed to the activities, but not committed to the result." They just wanted to use this idea that we could recycle our way out of the mess as a solution. And they always, always knew it didn't work. And they, along with promoting that, had lobbyists and conservative legislators writing bills and doing everything they could to stop any kind of limit of production, and especially, plastic bans. They have worked super hard to, not have single-use plastic bags banned. And this has really been, California has really been a battleground state for the plastics industry. And this, what, our Attorney General, Rob Bonta, I hope I'm saying his name right, is huge. I mean, all around the country and the world, people are like, wow, go California. What a fantastic lawsuit.
Let me ask just behind this, and one of the reasons I thought about you on this story is because you talk about, and you have a term for it, sort of end user, or for you like making the corporate polluters responsible for everything, not just the end users. Like, again, I end up with the crap, just like the slurry runs off into the stream or into the water. We end up paying to clean up a lot of the toxicity that is offered by these corporate polluters. shouldn't they have to build that into the cost or the tax, or in some way the remedy? Shouldn't that have to fall to them? So I thought of you in that spirit, because this is essentially making them own a little bit of the responsibility for the pollution. What is here? And there is some of the. This is a question. There are a lot of questions in the chat that are sort of like this, a bit provocative. So I'll offer this one. What does California hope to accomplish with this lawsuit? A big payment from Exxon, and what else? Do you want to take a crack at that? And I will too.
Absolutely. So the thing that you're talking about that I bring up often on the show is EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, because what they did, back in the 80s, when they realized this, the plastic pollution crisis was growing, that it was ending up in the ocean, and they had to, basically, they didn't want their profits to be mitigated in any way at all. So they wanted to keep making it. And then they came up with the idea of, recycling. And it really was the fear that they were going to be limited with production, or that there were going to be bans on certain items. And so they all signed on to this initiative, and it was companies like Pepsi and Coke, which make billions of these single-use plastic bottles every year, and they really promoted the idea of recycling and infrastructure. But that completely, and we've said this a million times, and you just said it too, put the whole responsibility for the waste at the feet of municipalities, states, i.e. us, the taxpayer. We paid to get rid of their trash. And the fact is, what this lawsuit is doing is saying, look, you can't just pollute with impunity. You just can't keep doing that. I mean, look, we have to pay a toll to use a road. So you have to pay a toll to use the environment as your, waste receptacle. But what they're saying is you've got to be part of what this lawsuit is saying. You've got to be part of the plastic pollution crisis, and how do we actually deal with it? Because cleanups just can't, individuals and motivated citizens, cleaning up the beach once a year, that's not cutting it. That's ridiculous. So they've got to put this abatement fund that will address the, plastic pollution problems, the cleanup, developing a better way to break down plastic. Now, this is super, super controversial, because we know that recycling doesn't work. The single-use plastic bags that we I want to get to sort of what the plastics industry, the sort of various fights we've had in California, but and pull me in, Mark, rein me in if I get out of control with this, because there are so many directions to go in.
Sure.
But the real thing that this lawsuit is saying, the sort of the subtext title of it is "Stop the Deception That Recycling Is Working," and this is really, really important, because it really is sort of, pulling, the scab off the wound or whatever. I mean, it's really exposing it for what it is. And if you have an Exxon-funded abatement fund, and you actually show, the other petrochemical companies, here we are taking Exxon to task, and, for their part in this pollution problem. Now, just to give you an idea, California deals.
Finish that thought. You're saying you're saying it sends a message to the other entities besides Exxon. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because back in 2020, California actually launched an investigation into the oil industry and their part in the plastic pollution crisis, which everyone knows is this global crisis. I mean, you go to a beautiful beach in Indonesia or anywhere in Southeast Asia, and you're going to be on some gorgeous tropical beach, and you're going to go into the water, and plastic is just going to be floating past you. So it's, like I say, it's really about the deception, and let's get, some transparency here, and really call, a spade with what's, going on.
And so the fund will be used to mitigate the effects, and also you view this as it's a penalty. It's right, a corporate penalty that is being paid.
Right.
Absolutely.
That you've got to be responsible for the cleanup. So the thing that we were talking about before, extended producer responsibility. This is a version of it, saying you have to be part of the cleanups. You have to help make them better. And then one of the things that I do want to talk about is this idea that there's got to be a better way to break down plastic. I mean, really what we have to do is to reduce the amount of plastic that we produce. But the problem with it is we have all this methane and ethane because of fracking, and it's much cheaper to produce virgin plastics from those gases than to take a plastic article that's already, in the environment and to recycle it. That's not as economic. But obviously, it's way better for the planet's health if it's not just being inundated with this deluge. So California is dealing with 10 billion pounds of plastic waste per year, 10 billion pounds. So when this suit was announced against Exxon by the state of California, their spokesperson, Lauren Kite, her name she responded with this, well, so far our advanced recycling has dealt with 60 million pounds of plastic waste. Well, that's 0.6 of a percent. That's a sixth of 1% of the plastic waste that one state, California, is producing. That's nothing.
That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary.
Yeah. So it's like, to make a claim like that, I'm going to call totally bogus, and that's a solution, because it isn't. And then the other problem with this advanced recycling, as I was saying, is, it's toxic and it uses energy. And really, we need to produce less plastic, and we need to produce these producers of plastic, these petrochemical companies need to produce plastic that truly is recyclable. Because right now the plastic, these plastic bags, so what happened in California is, we've been fighting this fight, and it goes back and forth. 2014, Californians voted that they wanted to get rid of single-use plastic bag, the flimsy one that we got at the supermarket that really was single-use. We were using 30 billion of them a year. Well, the plastics industry mobilized. There was a referendum. There was a 2-year hiatus where it couldn't be enacted. And they spent $20 million, lobbyists and their litigation team in California. They put a proposition on the 2016 ballot that basically was trying to get Californians to vote against the bag ban that they had already said they wanted in 2014. The proposition was worded in a super confusing way, so that people thought they were actually voting for the bag ban. There were two propositions, SB 270 and SB, I think it was something like 271. At the time, I was working with Heal the Bay and Algalita, and we had to have this huge grassroots effort to really educate the public. This is the proposition you need to be voting for, because the other one you'll actually be voting for bags to come back. And then when COVID happened, the plastics industry mobilized again and said, hey, pathogens are being, taken to and from the supermarket. Consumers and workers in supermarkets are in danger because of reusable bags. They're full of COVID pathogens. And that just wasn't true. But our governor, Gavin Newsom, said, okay, we can go back to those terrible, flimsy, single-use plastic bags for 60 days because, he wanted to be doing the right thing for people. So
sure. There's a comment here. There's a way to turn plastic back into oil fairly easily and cheaply. Folks tried to get governor to support it, or that might be government to support it, and they refused. Are you aware of that? Is that true, that there is an easy way? There's a way to turn plastic back into oil fairly easily and cheaply. Is that D. Elliott is saying that?
Oh,
I don't know. I've not heard that.
No, I have not heard that one either. I can do some investigation, but no.
Yeah,
if
somebody D. Elliott, send me something at the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. Send me that, and I'll look at it too.
Yeah. Send us a link to a scientific article that really proves that that's true, because there's just the amount of lying and this sort of incredible PR circus to promote plastics as safe and recyclable. We know that less than 10% of them get recycled. It's just It's awful, and it's absolutely, it's sort of the mirror image of what they're doing with the burning of fossil fuels and climate change, trying to say that, you know, really it's not us, and, you know, it's electric cars aren't a solution, and we have to keep.
No, you're right.
burning.
I mean, it's interesting. You make a really good point that it's the same dance we've been seeing, in effect, and that has been exposed on climate change. Essentially, they knew it was happening. They knew they were contributing to it. They had the latest research on it. They had transformative information that would have helped so much to release it to the public for decades. It goes all the way back to the 60s. They knew about this. And still, they covered it up. They didn't. Now we know. Similarly, you're saying they knew that plastic wasn't recyclable. They knew that these bags had no real end within the world of reuse, except to be thrown into the bin, as you would say. I mean, into some pit. And that's essentially where we are. And now, for lying about the recyclability of the plastic, California, anyway, is saying, hey, guys, you're going to pay a price for this. And it's a warning to all the rest of you as well.
Yeah. No, I think it's so important, and just to give you an idea of the nefariousness of what this industry does. So there's an organization called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, and they work with companies and conservative legislators to enact, the bills that they enact. So one of the things they're really into are these things called preemptive bills. And what they do is they get a preemptive bill passed in a state or, you know, in a city. And what it does is this preemptive bill prevents that jurisdiction from being able to, say, raise wages or ban a pesticide that's proved to be toxic. And in 2015, they wrote up this preemptive bill for any kind of restrictions on plastic, particularly plastic bans. And it's a one-size-fits-all document. You know, there's a blank, you just fill in your jurisdiction and you say, yes, we have this, you know, preemptive bill in place in our state. And so far, it's upwards of a dozen states that have signed it, you know, Arizona being one in 2018. And it means you can't ban plastic. I mean, this is outrageous.
It's crazy. I mean, that's just bowing down to moneyed interests. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's a naked money grab.
It's all about money.
But I thought of you. I mean, first of all, California does some transformative things. We also screw up things here, but sometimes the transformations are the things that really can have a cool ripple effect across the country and maybe beyond that. I mean, we really bow to corporate interests here, oil interests, in a way that other countries don't always. You know, here's Dana Jones says recycling of plastics is another great gaslighting example from the oil gas industry. Excuse the pun. No, it is true. Yeah, very well done. Dana is so right. I mean,
it's totally
it also plays to what we want to believe. All of us, even the a-holes in the chat who I see pushing back on this, you know, kind of like, oh, it's all crap. We're all going to die. Whatever the, you know, it's all the, like, none of it matters kind of thing. It all really matters. This is the thing you would do for yourself. If you knew you were ailing, you would do all you could to try to treat your illness. And the earth has an illness, and it's associated with this proliferation of these pollutants. And so this one, I think, is an important brick in the wall you build to try to address these issues. So anyway, I think that it's true. We want to believe that, and all of us do, is my point, that we can do something to maintain some sustainability, that we can recycle. So the lie that they tell us, which is that the plastic is all recyclable, or that little thing that you showed us that day, which is like, looks like it's a recyclable thing, but it's actually just something they put on the bottom of bottles to make it look like it's recyclable. You know what I'm talking about, Belinda? You're looking at me like you don't know what I'm talking about.
You mean the little triangle with the arrows?
Yeah, that's right, the triangle.
Well, yeah, and it depends
Well,
on the number.
Which one? You told me it doesn't do anything. It doesn't
Well,
indicate
the lower the number, the more recyclable, supposedly it is, if it's a 1 or a 2. But the problem is, where is it being recycled? Is it being recycled, here in the States, or are we still offshoring outsourcing the problem? Because a lot of it's still, we're trying to send it to some other country and tell them it's their problem. But the thing with plastic, and the thing you have to remember, and this is so important, is less than 10% of it actually gets recycled. The plastic that gets sold and is out there in the world, and plastic bags, and those heavy duty ones that we got told, these are going to replace the flimsy ones, and these ones are going to be great because you're going to reuse them. Well, people don't reuse them, and they're not recyclable. And if you put any kind of plastic bag in your recycling bin, it messes up the recycling facility. It gets caught in the cogs. They have to stop the whole machine. And there's one company that says, plastic bags a recycling company costs them $1 million in stoppages every year, the half hour that they've got to stop the machine, take out the plastic bag. So, and then supermarkets were supposed to provide a receptacle that those heavy duty plastic bags could go into if you didn't want to use them more than once. And apparently they don't all do that. They don't all end up at recycling. They put trackers in these things to see, does it really get to a recycling facility? And it doesn't. I've actually, I put up on Twitter a couple of stories about plastic. One from the LA Times, which really shows the sort of the truth about, how recycling doesn't work. And this plastic bag thing is really terrible because apparently after COVID, and once they took away the flimsy bags and they put back in the charge, the 5 cents a bag, people didn't bring back their reusable cloth bags. They just started using the plastic ones. So, California's really trying, but it also depends on consumers to also, kind of go, hey, I'm going to really commit to not using it. I was in the supermarket yesterday and there was this woman who was putting everything, including bananas, which, come in their own packaging. They're like, nature's best fast food, in its own, receptacle. Right. She was putting the bananas in a plastic bag, and then she was buying all these boxes of herbs. So, sage and parsley and, in the individual plastic bags and boxes, and they were going into plastic bags. I mean, I was behind her in line. My head was almost exploding. It was just this sea of plastic. And of course, I wanted to say something, but you have to pick your moments when you want to do a little bit of adult education.
That's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, it really is. It really is, because it's
especially
not my place.
These days, everybody's wound so tight. You never know what's going to happen. You don't want to become the recycling police, and yet it's very hard to watch that.
I think we maybe need recycling police. Belinda should be allowed to issue citations.
Well, if somebody's going to
Belinda Weymouth, eco-journalist here, I'd like to issue a ticket for your plastic usage today.
Just a warning this time, but
just
next
a friendly
time
warning to start with.
Well, we love our visits with you, and there is sadly so much more that this is from Wes. Thank you for the super chat.
Big shout out.
They just canceled the recycling program in Polk County, Florida. Last recycling pickup is October 1st. They take away our yellow bins. Wow, is that right? They won't even recycle anymore there. Gosh.
See, this is crazy because you have to be making an effort. I mean, it's nuts. It's really nuts. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this, because we're playing them at their own game. They've legislated and done all this stuff to keep using plastics, and now we're saying, okay, we're going to legislate against you and the pollution that you've caused. It's going to be your problem.
Exactly. Lisa says, I tried to follow my recycling waste management and found it ends up by the Mexican border, probably into the ocean there. Yeah, it's just the ocean really is the open sewer that we dump everything into, and it's just so sad. Kim, you have anything else before I excuse the witness? Because we do have to wrap up.
I just did a story the other day about this company that started in Seattle, then spread to, I think, Portland, the Bay Area, Los Angeles. And they're a specialized recycling company. And for an extra $14 a month, you hire this company and they'll come take plastic bags. They'll come take that plastic film that's over a lot of things. Mm-hmm. They'll take those little plastic dammits that close your bread bag closed, all of these batteries, all of these things that can't traditionally be recycled that just end up in the landfill, they've found places that will take them and use them to make things out of them. And so it's an extra cost. It's an extra $14 a month that maybe a lot of people can't afford. But I think some people are so upset or feeling guilty every time they have to throw away a plastic item in the regular garbage that they are motivated to pay this company to come, and they put canvas bags on your porch. You fill it up with all the plastic that can't go into your blue bin, or as Wes said, yellow bin, whatever color bin is your recycling, and they take it away and do other things with it. So it is possible if you pay for it.
The last thing I would say, just let me just say, this will just take 10 seconds. We have this thing where we want everything to be cheap. And sustainability is a responsibility we have as a culture. It can't always be cheap. Sometimes it costs more to live sustainably. So I sign on to the $14 a month for that. Go ahead.
Do you use the service?
No, I don't. I didn't even know about it until you just mentioned it. It's here in California?
It is.
All right. Well, send me something on that. Yeah,
I'll look it up really quickly.
I will.
Go ahead.
Google it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Send us the link. We want to know.
Look at this, Ms. Organic. Kim, what's the name of that? What's the name of that recycling company? How come they're not advertising on our show is what I would ask. I mean, come on, let's get on it.
So the name of the company is called, they say it's like high-end recycling. It's a new company. It's called Ridwell, Ridwell. Ridwell is the name of the company. They're again right now, and they're expanding quickly because they've realized that so many people want this service. So it's Ridwell. It's in Los Angeles. It's in the Bay Area. It's in Seattle. It's in Portland. And hopefully they'll continue to expand.
It's the way us libs can clean our souls, everybody. Right there with the Ridwell. Yeah.
Ridwell.
I just want to say one thing, because Randy is saying that $14 a month isn't a trivial additional expense for some people. And Randy, yes, that is true. And that is why we have to get the plastics industry to pay for this. There has to be an abatement fund, and ExxonMobil, et cetera, all of them. They have to pay for it, not us, because they're the ones that are making this huge profit and have been, selling us this absolute falsehood that recycling works, and we know that it doesn't. We've known for decades. So I'm totally with you, and it really has to be taken off, the individual, and it has to be put back on these companies, because it just can't be that they get to, have all these profits, make all this money, and poison everyone else's world. It's not okay.
Own, and they own no responsibility for the damage. Thank you. You can find Belinda Weymouth across social media. Belinda Weymouth is Waymouth. Find her here with us on Wednesdays. Thank you, Belinda. It's the Planet Stupid for today. Thanks, Belinda.
More.
It's the Planet Stupid. No. It's the Planet Stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on, everybody.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I
know we're over with the environment, but just touch more about Ridwell, because I think you're going to like this. Okay. So this company has found partners to plug the holes in the recycling program. Here's what they do. Businesses can take items like plastic film, like Ziploc bags, Amazon mailers that people throw away, multi-layer plastic like chip bags, granola bar wrappers, and they turn them into decking, drainage solutions, even cornhole sets. Yes, they've found people to recycle styrofoam, batteries, light bulbs, clothing. And so there are all these things that normally you would just chuck that in your, regular garbage. They found companies that can use them and recycle them into other things. So
Barbara is saying post that company, that Ridwell. Albert, maybe you can have a link to Ridwell in our description. And I also would say maybe you can get somebody from
Ridwell
onto the show. What's happening with you people?
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
Bookings through the people who are my partners on this show, Albert and Kim. After
to
you
our
take
defense, you just mentioned this a couple minutes ago.
I know. It's true. And I only mentioned it because it happened to be pertinent to what she was talking about. There, I put the link in the chat. So if anyone's interested.
What can you tell us about the scene?
We just found out about Ridwell a couple of minutes ago, Larry, and I'm already sweating Albert about not booking the head of Ridwell on the show.
What can you tell us about the scene?
I don't think Albert's happy.
Oh, my God.
All right. So we'll get somebody from Ridwell on this. I'm going to use Ridwell. And he's right, $14 a month. I don't even know if I've got that. I'm going to have a family sit down and figure it out. But Albert, thank you.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
They do it to me all the time.
Albert, thank you.
And I know we're running long, but I just wanted to share this with you. I got
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
Not that, the letters.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Thank you. Sheila is probably my top. Plastic recycling is very important to me. Thank you for this topic, says Nancy. That's really cool. Dear Mark, always a solid way to begin any correspondence. This is from Sheila. Were you bullied as a kid? If so, you must have given in to the bullies. Oh, this is about fear, because I was talking about fear as a greater motivator than hope. We were talking about Donald Trump and the fact that Donald Trump peddles fear, right? He has a dark sense of what he wants to communicate to you. All the cities are cesspools. All of those people are coming here to do all those terrible things. This country isn't a free fall with the Democrats, with the liberals. Let's get back to the only salvation you have, which will be with me. I, Donald Trump, can fix it all. That is a really dark vision, right, of the future. So he's selling and peddling fear. And what I was saying is, and Kamala Harris is, there's hope for the future, opportunity zones, and she's got a new economics thing. Let's turn the page and let's walk into the future with hope. We had this conversation the other day, and I was saying that fear, as just a way that it lands with people, is absolutely, from a primal standpoint, a more effective message always than hope. You will always respond to fear more powerfully than you'll respond to hope. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to vote for Donald Trump. It doesn't mean, again, but I'm just describing the basic instinct associated with fear avoidance. So I get, and this is what we did the other day. We talked about it. Sheila says, Dear Mark, were you bullied as a kid? If so, you must have given in to the bullies. So, again, I put that in the category of, really? So I said, Sheila, fear is a primal instinct. Hope is not a primal instinct. That's the fact. So I'm wondering why you insult me like that, aside from the fact that people like to insult me. So she then writes back to me and says, I am sorry you were insulted, she says. It's unfortunate you took my question as an insult. That wasn't my intent. I was bullied as a child as well as an adult, but I never backed down to bullies. All I am saying is you can't live in fear, especially from a mere mortal human being. So come on, Mark, stop being so pessimistic and have hope. You will feel much lighter living with hope rather than fear, which is a negative, heavy feeling. Have a good evening.
Good day, sir.
All right. Wow.
Cassandra says, indeed, Mark, fear motivates. That's why religion uses it.
Thank you, Cassandra. I don't know. I don't say I live in fear. How do we get into that? I don't get it. All of a sudden, I get a lecture about how I've got to live with hope. And blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, guys, I was just explaining why that's an effective messaging tool, an effective messaging technique. And I get all this blowback about, oh, you've got to be more optimistic and you've got to live in a hope. And, well, how can you give in to bullies? Please, please. I went to a different school every year, says Walter, but I was never bullied.
That's good.
Anyway. And Vilma says,
oh, sorry.
Your feelings, Mark, about fear and hope are exactly what I feel the differences are between the two candidates. Good job in your description. Thank you, Vilma. We need a little more Vilma-ing around this place. A little more Vilma-ing and a little less Sheila-ing. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Smoking the hopium, says Dave. Right on.
John Watson wants to know if you were bullied by the Amish.
Who is having that conversation?
Oh, right on. What a great way to...
The Mark Thompson Show.
What a great way to finish up. Albert, we do have to stop, I think, don't we?
We've made it. We did an extended cut of the Mark Thompson Show today.
I feel, honestly, Albert, as though we're just hitting stride right now. I mean, I kind of feel like we started short. Started slow. You know how major league pitchers just get into it, after a few innings? Or, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, anyway. But now the analytics say if you face batters 3 times, you need to get pulled. So.
Oh, that is true. That's true. D. Elliott says, hey, everyone, look up Frontline on PBS. The Choice 2024, Harris and Trump. Fascinating. I learned a lot about both of them. It's interesting. I just watched about 19 minutes of that last night, and I did like it. I've got to go back to it. I just had other stuff I had to do. Thanks. The After Party Live with Kim is next. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Kim. And thank you, everybody, for supporting the show. And Shadow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Oh, my gosh.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
We've got a full platter for David Katz tomorrow. We'll see you then. Also, Anthony Davis tomorrow. Till then, bye-bye.